The Little Mermaid far out in the sea, where the water is as blue as the prettiest cornflower, and as totally obvious, it is extremely profound, so profound, to be sure, that no link could sound it, and many church steeples, heaped one upon another, would not reach starting from the earliest stage to the outside of the water above. There stay the Sea King and his subjects. We should not envision that there is nothing at the base of the ocean, however uncovered yellow sand. No, without a doubt, for on this sand develop the weirdest blossoms and plants, the leaves and stems of which are malleable to such an extent that the smallest disturbance of the water makes them mix, as though they had life. Fishes, both huge and little, float between the branches as winged creatures fly among the trees here upon land. In the deepest spot of all stands the castle of the Sea King. Its walls are built of coral, and the long Gothic windows are of the clearest amber. The roof is formed of shells that open and close as the water flows over them. Their appearance is very beautiful, for in each lies a glittering pearl which would be fit for the diadem of a queen. The Sea King had been a widower for many years, and his aged mother kept house for him. She was a very sensible woman, but exceedingly proud of her high birth, and on that account wore 12 oysters on her tail, while others of high rank were only allowed to wear 6. She was, however, deserving of very great praise, especially for her care of the little sea princesses, her 6 granddaughters. They were beautiful children, but the youngest was the prettiest of them all. Her skin was as clear and delicate as a rose leaf, and her eyes as blue as the deepest sea, but, like all the others, she had no feet and her body ended in a fish's tail. All day long they played in the great halls of the castle, or among the living flowers that grew out of the walls. The large amber windows were open, and the fish swam in, just as the swallows fly into our houses when we open the windows. Only the fishes swam up to the princesses, ate out of their hands, and allowed themselves to be stroked. Outside the palace there was a wonderful nursery, wherein developed splendid red and all blue blossoms and blooms like blazes of fire. The natural products sparkled like gold, and the leaves and stems waved forward and backward constantly. The earth itself was the best sand, however blue as the fire of consuming sulfur. Over everything lay an exceptional blue brilliance, as though the blue sky were all over, above, and underneath, rather than the dull profundities of the ocean. In quiet climate the sun could be seen, appearing as though a rosy purple blossom with light spilling from the calyx. Every one of the youthful princesses had a little plot of ground in the nursery, where she may burrow and plant however she wanted. One organized her bloom bed as a whale, another liked to make hers like the figure of a little mermaid, while the most youthful youngster made hers round, similar to the sun, and in it developed blossoms as red as his beams at dusk. She was a weird kid, tranquil and nice. While her sisters demonstrated enjoyment at the great things which they acquired from the disaster areas of vessels, she thought about her pretty blossoms, red like the sun, and a lovely marble sculpture. It was the portrayal of an attractive kid, cut out of unadulterated white stone, which had tumbled to the base of the ocean from a disaster area. She planted by the sculpture a rose-shaded sobbing willow. It developed quickly, and before long draped its new branches over the sculpture, practically down to the blue sands. The shadows had the shade of violet and waved back and forth like the branches, with the goal that it appeared as though the crown of the tree and the root were influencing everything, attempting to kiss one another. Nothing gave her such a great amount of delight as to catch wind of the world over the ocean. She made her old grandma reveal to her all she knew about the boats, and of the towns, the individuals and the creatures. To her it appeared to be generally magnificent and excellent to hear that the blossoms of the land had aroma, while those underneath the ocean had none, that the trees of the timberland were green, and that the fishes among the trees could sing so pleasantly that it was a delight to hear them out. Her grandma called the flying creatures fishes, or the little mermaid would not have perceived what was implied, for she had never observed fellows. At the point when you have arrived at your 15th year, said the grandma, you will have authorization to ascend out of the ocean and sit on the rocks in the evening glow while the incredible boats go cruising by. At that point you will see the two backwoods and towns. In the next year, one of the sisters would be 15, yet as each was a year more youthful than the other, the most youthful would need to hold up 5 years before her divert came to ascend from the base of the sea, to consider that to be as we do. Nonetheless, each vowed to mention to the others what she saw on her first visit and what she thought was generally lovely. Their grandma couldn't reveal to them enough. There's such a large number of numerous things about which they needed to know. None of them ached such a great amount for her chance to come as the most youthful, she who had the longest and ideal opportunity to pause, and who was so peaceful and insightful. Numerous evenings she remained by the open window, gazing upward through the dull blue water and watching the fish as they sprinkled about with their blades and tails. She could see the moon and stars sparkling faintly, yet through the water they looked bigger than they do to our eyes. When something like a dark cloud went among her and them, she realized that it was either a whale swimming over her head or a boat loaded with individuals who never envisioned that a truly little mermaid was remaining underneath them, holding out her white hands towards the bottom of their boat. Finally, the oldest was 15 and was permitted to ascend to the outside of the sea. At the point when she returned, she had several things to discuss. In any case, the best thing, she stated, was to lie on a shoal in the calm twilight ocean, close to the shore, looking at the lights of the close-by town that shimmered like several stars, and tuning into the hints of music, the commotion of carriages, the voices of people, and the joyful chiming of the ringers in the congregation steeples. Since she was unable to go close to all these magnificent things, she yearned for them even more. Gracious, how excitedly did the most youthful sister tune into every one of these portrayals. Furthermore, a short time later, when she remained at the open window turning upward through the dim blue water, she thought of the extraordinary city, with all its clamor and commotion, and even liked she could hear the sound of the congregation chimes down in the profundities of the ocean. In one more year the subsequent sister got authorization to ascend to the outside of the water and to swim about where she satisfied. She rose similarly as the sun was setting, and this, she stated, was the most wonderful sight of all. The entire sky looked like gold, and violet and rose-hued mists, which she was unable to depict, floated across it. Also, more quickly than the mists, flew an enormous herd of wild swans toward the setting sun, similar to a long white cover over the ocean. She likewise swam towards the sun, yet it sank into the waves, and the ruddy colors blurred from the mists and from the ocean. The third sister's turn followed, and she was the boldest of all, for she swam up an expansive stream that exhausted into the ocean. On the banks she saw green slopes secured with excellent plants, and royal residences and manors peeping out from in the midst of the pleased trees of the woodland. She heard feathered creatures singing, and felt the beams of the sun so firmly that she was obliged regularly to jump under the water to cool her consuming face. In a limited spring she found an enormous gathering of minimal human kids, practically bare, dunning about in the water. She needed to play with them, however they fled in an extraordinary dread. And afterwards somewhat dark creature, it was a canine, yet she didn't have any acquaintance with it, for she had never observed one, went to the water and yelped at her so angrily that she got scared and surged back to the vast ocean. In any case, she said she should always remember the wonderful woodland, the green slopes, and the pretty kids who could swim in the water despite the fact that they had no tails. The fourth sister was more hesitant. She stayed amidst the ocean, yet said it was very as wonderful there as closer the land. She could see numerous miles around her, and the sky above resembled a ringer of glass. She had seen the boats, however, at such a huge span that they appeared as though ocean gulls. The dolphins brandished in the waves, and the extraordinary whales rambled water from their noses till it appeared as though 100 well springs were playing toward each path. The fifth sister's birthday happened in the winter, so when her turn came she saw what the others had not seen the first occasion when they went up. The ocean looked very green, and huge ice sheets were drifting about, each like a pearl, she stated, however bigger and loftier than the holy places worked by men. They were of the most particular shapes and sparkled like jewels. She had situated herself on one of the biggest and let the breeze play with her long hair. She saw that all the boats cruised past quickly, guiding as distant as they could, as though they feared the ice shelf. Towards night, as the sun went down, foreboding shadows secured the sky, the thunder rolled, and the glimmers of lightning sparkled red on the ice sheets as they were thrown about by the hurling ocean. On all the boats the sails were reefed with dread and shaking, while she sat on the gliding chunk of ice, tranquilly viewing the lightning as it dashed its forked glimmers into the ocean. Every one of the sisters, when first she had consent to ascend to the surface, was charmed with the new and wonderful sights. Since they were grown-up young ladies and could go when they satisfied, they had gotten very uninterested about it. They before long wished themselves back once more, and following a month had passed they said it was considerably more wonderful down underneath and pleasanter to be at home. However, regularly, at night hours, the five sisters would twine their arms about one another and ascend to the surface together. Their voices were more beguiling than that of any individual, and before the methodology of a tempest, when they expected that a boat may be lost, they swam before the vessel, singing charming melodies of the joys to be found in the profundities of the ocean and asking the explorers not to fear in the event that they sank to the base. In any case, the mariners couldn't comprehend the tune and thought it was the moaning of the tempest. These things were never excellent to them, for if the boat sank, the men were suffocated, and their dead bodies alone arrived at the castle of the Sea King. At the point when the sisters rose, affectionately intertwined, through the water, their most youthful sister would stand very alone, taking care of them, prepared to cry. Just, since mermaids have no tears, she endured all the more intensely. "Goodness, were I yet 15 years of age," said she, "I realized that I will adore the world up there and all the individuals who live in it." Finally she contacted her 15th year. "All things considered, presently you are grown up," said the old widow, her grandma. "Come, and let me embellish you like your sisters." And she set in her hair a wreath of white lilies, of which each blossom leaf was a large portion of a pearl. At that point the old woman requested 8 incredible clams to append themselves to the tail of the princess to give her high position. "In any case, they hurt me so," said the little mermaid. "Indeed, I know. Pride must endure torment," answered the old woman. Gracious, how happily she would have shaken off regardless of this greatness and laid the hefty wreath. The red blossoms in her own nursery would have fit her greatly improved. In any case, she was unable to change herself, so she said goodbye and rose as gently as an air pocket to the outside of the water. The sun had quite recently set when she raised her head over the waves. The mists were colored with ruby and gold, and through the flickering nightfall channeled the night star in the entirety of its magnificence. The ocean was quiet, and the air mellow and new. An enormous boat with 3 poles lay quieted on the water. Just one sail was set, for not a breeze mixed, and the mariners sat inert at hand, or in the midst of the gear. There was music and tune ready, and as haziness went ahead, 100-hued lamps were lit, as though the banners of all countries waved noticeable all around. The little mermaid swam near the lodge windows, and from time to time, as the waves lifted her up, she could glance in through glass window sheets and see various gaily dressed individuals. Among them, and the most excellent of all, was a youthful ruler with huge, bruised eyes. He was 16 years old, and his birthday was being praised with incredible presentation. The mariners were moving at hand, and when the ruler emerged from the lodge, in excess of 100 rockets rose noticeable all around, making it as brilliant as day. The little mermaid was frightened to such an extent that she jumped submerged, and when she again loosened up her head, it looked as though all the stars of paradise were falling around her.